so much for showing up to our event. You don't know, this is, at least she's over here on this side for me. This is Devin, Elle, Kurtz. I'll let her introduce herself, talk more about herself, and then we'll get into the demo.
Hi guys, I'm super happy to be here. Thanks for having me. Thank you all for coming. My name is Devin Elle Kurtz. I am an artist. I have been a background painter in the animation industry for the past, I think, 5 years now. And I also do illustration, visual development stuff. Mainly those three things, I would say. I do a little bit of concept art for games, but that's rare. But I kind of just do whatever I find interesting in the moment. And lately, I've been painting a lot of dragons. In the past, I've painted oceans and cities and Shibas with foxes, and I kind of cycle through different topics, and I figured I might give you guys a little tour through my website just for anyone who's not familiar, if you guys are up for that. So I'll go ahead and share my screen. Currently, my current kind of like subject that I've been painting a lot has been dragons. So here's some dragon art from recently. I think there's more on here. Don't know if I've uploaded all of the recent stuff because I'm very bad about that. Oh, here's another dragon piece. So been doing dragons lately. I also have done a ton of like underwater stuff. I grew up in Santa Cruz, California, and kind of by the Monterey Bay Aquarium, which is an amazing aquarium. I fully recommend giving it a visit if you ever have an opportunity. It's a beautiful place. So I've done a lot of ocean themed work just because it has been such a huge source of inspiration for me for my whole life. Also just the ocean in general. I went to high school like a walking distance from the ocean. So my friends and I used to just kind of walk over and hang out at the ocean after school. So the ocean's always been a really, really big source of inspiration for me. So yeah, lots of ocean themed stuff. Lots of environments with characters. I really like painting scenes. Like, I guess that's kind of how I think of them and describe them in my head, is like scenes where you've got like, you know, environments and characters and like stuff happening. I really like to paint things that have storytelling. So like here, this was a piece that was supposed to depict like a sleeping giant in the middle of a lake in the forest, and different creatures that would come to visit the sleeping giant and see it, you know, throughout a day. I really love storytelling. I've always loved writing also, and working in animation also has made me really interested in storytelling, because so much of what I do in my animation job is think about how to integrate as much storytelling as I can into the environment or visual development work, you know, whatever I'm doing in animation. So yeah, I guess that's kind of where my interests lie. I'll just cycle through some more stuff real quick, in case anyone has not seen my work before, because I'm seeing nature with ocean, underwater. Okay, let's do it. Let's do underwater. I could totally do underwater. All right, awesome. Cool. Well, I will share screen again, and we can do underwater painting. All right, let me get Photoshop open. So let's see. What would be a good thing to paint? What have I not done recently? I always end up doing, I like default to manta rays because they're like one of my favorite creatures. But you know what people liked recently? I did a piece with like sharks in shallow water. I could do another creature in shallow water. This is actually a pretty easy setup to demo. It's pretty fun. Yeah, kind of like a top-down water scene could be fun. Maybe we could do, let's see, what else
We
can
have
we do in
a
shallow water?
sea dragon suggested by
Sea dragon?
Dennis. Actually, Devin, on the top, it'll give you a few options, and you can see, if you click that, you can see the chat.
Oh, okay, hold up. More chat. More. Oh, I see it. Okay. Sea dragon, sea pancakes. All right, why don't we do a sea dragon swimming with some manta rays? That'd be cool. That'd be fun. Let's do it. All right.
Great.
Let's see. Let's do this. Let's do this long ways rather than short ways. So let's do do a wide piece. And then you guys can see more of it, and it can be a little bit easier. I will pull up some manta rays on my other screen so that I can see what they look like in shallow water. All right, manta rays, shallow water. And I'll drag over what and I'll drag the reference on here so that you guys can see. I'll make a reference doc. All right, so yeah, I think manta rays in shallow water will be fun. And I can show you guys how I get some of the fun, like warbly effects, like of the water. Like this is actually like a pretty easy like type of painting to do. I mean, okay, I don't want to say easy. I would say it's like accessible. Like it's something that if you like know the steps to take, then it's like most people could like follow along. So I think it's actually like a pretty good thing to do for a demo. So this should be fun, and we can add a little dragon in. I'll get as far as I can in the hour and a half. I mean, we may not completely finish it because usually like 2 hours ish is about what I need for like a painting, even the simple one. But I don't know, maybe we'll get all the way through, and I'll post it on social media so you guys can see it finished. Shallow water is really, really nice because you just get like these beautiful like light effects. You know, it's light passing through the water and being distorted. Like the light is being diffracted by these pockets of water that form, and that's what gives you these like really cool patterns on the ground that I just think it's so beautiful. All right,
I have to ask, do you have like all of these references on hand, or are you just looking them up right now?
I just Googled manta rays shallow water, and I just put this on my other screen because it's like hard to go back and forth. But yeah, I just Google. I should honestly. I paint manta rays so often that it's pretty silly that I do it. Like I grab new references each time, but I think one of the reasons I do it is that I find different things each time then. So I'm not referencing like the same stuff over and over again. Because I've found that when I do have kind of saved reference sheets, I don't tend to dig more. I tend to just kind of rely on that. And then, you know, I may like miss some really cool opportunity. Like maybe there's a new picture that's been, you know, posted or whatever. So kind of enjoy the reference gathering. I think that should be good. I think that'll do the trick. All right. So I'm going to drag this reference sheet to my other screen now, but you guys got a look at it so you guys can kind of see what I will be looking at while painting this. So since I did such like a green kind of shallow water piece last time, I wonder if I'd grab a slightly different color actually. So hold up, let me find a different watercolor that that we could do so that it's not just a total repeat of that that shark piece. I feel like yellow could be neat. Like really clear water, just like seeing right through the water onto the shore, like this kind of like greenish yellow. I think that could be really fun. And then I can show you guys how we can get some of these sort of ripply water effects. Because it looks really complicated. It does. Like it's the kind of thing that looks really, really difficult to paint. But if we are painting digitally and have like the magic of liquify and the smudge tool, then it actually isn't that hard. And we'll get there. I'll show you how to do that. So dragging that back over, we'll do kind of a golden water situation. So let's see, maybe when I'm starting a new painting, I always try to kind of set my key first. Like I choose a color and then I use this color to base every other color that I put down kind of around it. I think I want it to be slightly more green, kind of like that. So this is going to be kind of my leading color. It's going to be the color that I use to judge all of the other colors. And I'll often, if I'm going to be pulling a new color, like if I'm starting with this and want to pull a different color, I'll often color pick this and then actually go and like nudge my way to where I want to go from there, so that everything I'm doing is in relation to this initial color that I've set up. And that kind of helps me make a palette as I go and keep it consistent, kind of like a narrow palette. You know, like if any of you do oil painting, you might be familiar with something like the Zorn palette. This is kind of the method that I use to create a limited palette without like, you know, actually setting it up ahead of time, just kind of doing it as I go. So that's kind of why I do that. And let's sketch in some manta rays and a dragon. So maybe the dragon, I feel like we could get kind of a cool like thrust through the water like this, you know, have it kind of winding its way through the piece. Kind of like snakes do in water, like water snakes, or just any snake that's swimming. And they create these really, really cool ripples that come out on all sides, kind of like this. And why don't we make it a little bit smaller like this so that there's more room. Something like that, maybe. Oh, and also I'm sketching with just a hard oval brush at first. I might switch to something that has some, you know, opacity effects later on, but initially I kind of just like to lay stuff in with a really basic, really basic hard edged brush. I find that it helps me not like noodle too much, just make decisions and go with it, go with my instinct on things. So let's see. So maybe if it's snake-like, then a lot of times with snakes, we get this kind of line down the back that defines the volume. And they actually get a little bit of this kind of triangle shape, not total triangle. Like we actually sometimes get this kind of a shape in snakes. If we're doing kind of a serpent, sea serpent type deal, then it would probably have similar kind of volumes and can start using that shape to give myself some planes. So often what we see in snakes, I've drawn a lot of snakes before, should mention that. I don't know every creature off the top of my head. We get this top plane up near the front, up near the head, that actually kind of is like a long triangle that turns into this spine that then is just kind of like a single like rounded line that goes down the back. And then overweight snakes, they carry their fat out to the side like this. And then if they're underweight, they get this kind of collapsed triangle look. But I think like a healthy sea serpent would just have this kind of rounded triangle look, volume wise, through the body. Something like that. And let's see, what kind of head should it have? Maybe kind of a snake-like head, but maybe some fins. Maybe there's some fins involved. Off to the sides of the head. Something like that. Get the top plane of the head in. Start kind of refining. me look up a water snake. Ooh, koi snake, that would be cool. I feel like we maybe want it to kind of match the manta rays color-wise a little bit. So let's see, what do water snakes look like? Water snakes, what kind of face do you have? Oh, pretty basic snake face. Grab that. And then there's some lizards like the Chinese water dragon that have some really cool, yeah, like that could be really cool. I wonder if we get some like back fins. Also, they just have like the coolest heads. Like they look so cute. I love these guys. I just love their heads. Yeah, something like this could be cool. Head-wise. Maybe instead of doing the side fins, we do like a top fin that kind of sticks out of the water. That could be pretty neat. Let's try that. Okay, so get a more narrow aerodynamic, or not aerodynamic, the word for that, but water head that won't that will let it kind of move quickly through the water. I think that would make the most sense. And then we can get a fin in here. And maybe that actually picks up again. We want this to be a little more top down, so we'd see some of this side plane like that. Yeah, this could be fun. I think this could be a fun sea serpent design. Maybe we get a little bit of fins on the side of the head here. Water snakes have the cutest little faces. They're very squared off, actually. They don't have a lot of dimension. They just kind of go right into the face from the body. Which snakes often do. I don't know what else would happen. All right, so we need, let's see, we need this kind of center line down the middle here, and then we probably need nostrils and some sort of scale detail up at the front here that we can use to define this. Ooh, maybe we get individual spines that turn into a fin. So we get a few individual spines and then they kind of turn into a fin. That maybe then it just settles lower, closer to the body, but we keep getting these little spines like in the Chinese water dragons.
I love how you keep thinking on the fly and like keep just coming up with new things like, oh, let's add that, let's add that. Like it's so like free form and creative.
Oh my gosh, that's my process always. I'm like changing everything down to the last minute. I think it comes from working on a team in an animation studio, actually, because I don't think I worked like this as much before working on Disenchantment. I think I would kind of like come up with an idea and then like follow it through. But working in animation, you start like, you get really used to ideas being generated and then thrown away really rapidly. It happens like 20 times a day. And you realize after time that you get to the better, you really do get to the better ideas that way. and that that working that way, I think, helps me arrive at more fun, you know, unique topics than I would have otherwise. Because like iterating on something many times, you end up with stuff that isn't like obvious isn't the right word, because you know what's obvious to one person could be it could be not obvious at all to somebody else, but you get stuff that is maybe like not what you'd see often for an idea, and that can be really cool. It can be cool to come up with something that works really well but that isn't what you'd immediately jump to, and I really like that. I really like that element of the process. I think that working that way has allowed me to create more fun story ideas and just more variety of things than I was doing before working on Disenchantment. So I'm very appreciative for that. Nice. All right, that's a fun little snake. Snakes get this little dimple usually down at like the bottom of their body, kind of like that. And that can help us kind of define the form. So we've got this snake swimming in water. Let's look and see what we get when we look up swimming snakes. Something like that, I feel like could be really neat. Yeah, that's so cool. The way that they kind of sit on top of the water is really neat. Pulling that onto my my other screen over here so that I can look at it. Wow, snakes are so cool. And I'm guessing this guy should be bigger. Like there's probably, I think it would be fun if this guy was bigger and then there were like, you know, manta rays like underneath it, especially if it's like closer to the surface of the water, you know. If this guy's at the surface of the water, maybe it starts out here. Let's do a fun thing. Let me show you guys a fun technique. All right, so I'm gonna add a multiply layer on top of this, and what I paint in gray, this is going to be out of the water, and then what I leave blank, that's in the water. So this is a really fun way to define volume of stuff. So maybe we start out and the head and the neck is kind of out of the water, and then we get just the spine coming out like that, and it goes underneath, and then we get this out of the water again. And then going back under in the back there. Easy way to kind of figure out the depth of what you're doing. And yeah, I think that will work. This will be fun. This will be a fun piece. All right, so it can be kind of dipping down over there. And I think we want, something like that. Yeah. Show that dipping down a little bit. Cool. By the way, if you guys have any questions, feel free to ask. I know I don't always, I jump around. My thought process is like 50 places at once. So if I start a train of thought and don't finish it, you can remind me and I'll come back to it. My brain likes to think about everything all at the same time.
I think you've stopped and finished all of your train of thought, at least from what I've noticed. So you've been good.
Glad to hear. All right, so we've got this snake, serpent, and then we want manta rays in the water underneath. So just start kind of blocking them in first. I use this shape to block in rays. And they can be underneath it because there's water underneath.
That's a very good shape for manta rays. Definitely get the idea.
I mean, you can get some that are kind of in more of like a flying position, and some that are kind of more fully spread out like that. And I'll duplicate some of them and then make small adjustments. I don't paint every manta ray. That's my my little hack for you. Very applicable in many situations. If you're painting lots of manta rays, you can take a few, you can paint like 5 and then duplicate them and change them like 10% and no one will notice. So for all the situations where you're painting schools of manta rays, you can think about that. Cool. So let's do, there's a couple different types of rays. I really like spotted eagle rays because they have these like beautiful spots on their back, but I think that that might actually complicate this piece a little bit too much. So I think I'm going to do like your basic manta rays, and they have these little things like this. So start kind of blocking those in. Oh, and they all have tails. And they do have heads. They're just not very apparent. They get these little tails. These two little flaps at the back here. And they do have form. They have this body section kind of. You know, they are pancakes, but they have a little bit of form. We can see just a little bit of form. And then some of them we can have them with like, you know, their little fins coming up, creating some interest. That'll be really fun. This will be cute. All right.
I'm excited.
All right, I'm gonna put all of this in a group and turn the opacity down, and let's just paint the water pattern first, because I think that will be a good order to go in. I'm gonna show you guys something real quick by dragging this in. So the light pattern underneath water, it actually like it follows a pattern that we can copy. So it looks kind of overwhelming at first. There's a lot happening, but what we really get is we get these like kind of lines that then form these like triangle and diamond shapes. So if you guys kind of see what I mean, it creates this overall like pattern of these like lines, and then we get like these lines breaking them up. And like that's just the pattern that we can repeat all the way across, is just creating these lines and then connecting them with triangles or diamonds. And yeah, I just repeat that throughout the whole piece, and we will get our water pattern. So first thing I'm going to do, I hope you guys aren't hearing the neighbor's dog barking too loudly, because I hear it, but I'm not sure if my microphone's picking it up. Get a little bit more green in here. And let's get a little bit more like variation in the light colors too. So I just want some like color variation. Oh, all the brushes I'm using have color dynamics enabled, and Photoshop and Clip Studio Paint and Procreate both have this capability also. I'm not sure about other programs, but I know that the 3 kind of main digital art, digital painting programs that that people use, they all have the ability to add color dynamics, and you want to make sure that apply per tip is checked so that you get variation within a single stroke, not every time you make a stroke. But one of my favorite brush kind of tips is to add color dynamics, because it lets you get a lot more variation in the color like really quickly, which I really like that. I think that makes life a lot easier. All right, so get some, I think we'll do like kind of a green in this corner, like kind of gradient down toward yellow in this corner, and that can be kind of the overall pattern here. Neat. And then I'll grab an overlay layer and I will brush on the light patterns using just kind of a soft painterly brush. So just like I was talking about, like first thing I'm going to do is create some kind of just like lines through the piece like this. And they don't need to be too even. Like it really, we can skip some, they can start in some places and then go away in others. We're just kind of creating these lines that go throughout the piece like this. And I'm going to lock that, and I'm actually going to make some of them a little more yellow in some places. So I'm just switching to like a more gold color. Unlocking it again. And now we just need to connect them, start creating these kind of like triangle and diamond patterns like this. So this is what I mean when I said that it's like easy. Like it's not that it's easy necessarily, but it's that like if you know the steps, if we know how to break down, you know, the complexities of water into like manageable steps, then it's an accessible type of background to paint. You don't need a lot of additional knowledge. You know, you don't need to know perspective or anything to paint this type of a background. And I think they look really pretty. I love the ocean. So I'm just connecting the lines here and there, creating these. And then as I go through, I'm breaking them up into smaller and smaller kind of sections. So first I'm breaking up the larger sections with like larger lines that go through, creating again those like triangle diamond shapes. And then after I finish the larger ones, then we just need to go in and start defining smaller ones. So going into each of these kind of larger patterned areas. And again, making diamonds, making triangles, just breaking up these shapes into smaller ones. And we want it to feel kind of loose and organic. You know, we don't want it to feel like too machine made, because it should feel random, but then we also want to design it. So this is kind of the dilemma with painting nature, right? Is we're designing it, we're a human being designing it. So it's not going to be random. You know, we don't have the ability to create true randomness the way that nature does. Our brain likes to make patterns. We are constantly fighting against the fact that we like to make patterns. And that's why when you look at, you know, trees or grass or really anything in nature drawn by someone who's closer to the beginning of their art journey, you'll often see a lot of repetition. Things will be kind of the same shape over and over again. You'll get the same shapes repeated. And it's just because our brain likes to find and make patterns. And it's a good thing that our brain likes to do that. You know, it's how we survived in the wild. Like, we are pattern recognition machines. And it's been really valuable for us as a species. But then as we're painting, you know, natural environments, we do have to kind of fight against that a little bit and really try to generate some stuff that feels organic and natural. But it's a fake organic and natural, because, you know, nature can spit out results that don't look great in a composition. So it's got to feel organic and natural enough that it doesn't feel too repetitive or too man-made, but, you know, designed enough that it's serving the composition and looks nice. And that is the challenge with nature. It's always a balancing act between those elements. And that's the challenge, but it's also the fun of it. I think it's really fun to paint nature. and to paint randomness. I'm going to add a little bit of perspective to this after, because I'm painting it totally flat right now, but I'm going to, you'll see what I mean. I'm going to add a little bit, I'm going to use the transform tool to create a little bit more of a feeling of perspective of this rolling back in space just a little bit, not a ton, just enough that it doesn't feel like we're looking like straight down at this, because we are looking at a slight angle, and that slight angle is going to let us, you know, move the shadows and create dimension, and it's going to be a nice appealing angle. Cool. All right, that seems good enough at the moment. So let's do this. So I'm just gonna do transform distort, and I'm just gonna drag this out and this back a little bit. Just to create the feeling that the ground is kind of coming toward us. And I'll switch to perspective and just do this a little bit. Not too much. Just kind of like that. And then I'm going to make a clipping mask, and I'm actually going to fade that out as we go back that way. So we'll get this effect of it kind of intensifying as it comes toward us. It's a little too strong right here, so I'm going to kind of make that go down a little bit. Especially because that's just the first pass on the light through the water. I don't want to build it up too much too quickly. I want to start kind of simple, and then we'll slowly build it up. I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this, and then I'm going to blur it. Let me apply this this layer mask too. We're going to blur this like this, and I'm going to set this. I'm going to make it all more yellow, kind of like that. And then as it goes back in space, I'll make it more green. And that will give us a little saturation and a nice kind of soft glow. Maybe I turn that down a little bit. Cool. So, all right, we've got our sea floor now. Let's create a little bit of dimension on the actual ocean floor, I think. We often get these kind of like stripes through the water, just really softly. We might see that, like kind of like sandbanks collecting. And I'm just gonna add a little bit of that in. It's also just gonna allow me to kind of vary the shade, the tone a little bit, just to have there be a little bit more happening. Just kind of softly brushing over this and creating the appearance of some dimension. Cool. Turn that down a little bit. All right, that's a nice little backdrop. I think it would be cool if, I'm gonna try something. I think it would be cool if we saw more blue coming in. Yeah, I like that. I think that looks neat. Yeah, if we have more blue coming in, and it looks like the water is deeper that way, and shallower this way. Cool, fun. You know, if that's the case, I think that what we should actually do is have it be out of the water toward the front of its body. Let me grab my oval brush again, easiest to work with. I think the front of its body should be out of the water more because it's going into the shallows. And then as we go back, we can get a little variation here, but then it should be in the water more toward that way. I think that actually compositionally is stronger also, because it brings the focus down this way. we get this kind of a compositional effect of, ooh, you know, right there. And then
That was a
these
great
guys.
sound effect.
Oh, thank you. Get that kind of a feeling. Alrighty. Well, let's paint the dragon first, I think, and then we can do the manta rays second, and then we can just do the parts of the manta rays that we see, and we can hide some of them under the dragon, just to save time since we're on a limited time frame. How long has it been? Let me kind of all right, cool. Well, I don't know if we're gonna finish this, but I'll do my best. I'll get as far as I can through this.
Yeah, good.
I use the Lasso Tool for so much. The Lasso Tool is one of my absolute favorite tools, and it's one of the reasons that I've stayed with Photoshop, despite there being some really cool features in other programs, is that I can't. The Lasso Tool in other programs isn't as good, and I just really like being able to, you know, add to selections really easily, and have the selection tool, the Lasso Tool, work the way that it has for the past decade for me. So I'm a huge fan of it. Procreate and Clip Studio do have their own versions of it, and I'm sure they're fine. They just don't work the way that I'm used to, and so it slows me down. But one day I'll learn to use them more effectively in other programs. Procreate, I don't think it has the polygonal lasso tool, which let me show you guys something. In Photoshop, if I'm making an organic shape and then it has one hard edge, I can just hold Alt down and it turns into a hard edge lasso tool, and then I can release Alt, organic, hold it. You can go back and forth between organic and hard edged lasso shapes. Saves so much time, you know, because if you're drawing like a building, if you're painting a building and it's got like one crumbled edge, but the rest of it is, you know, normal like hard edged walls, then it's just the perfect way to select it. So love the Photoshop Lasso tool. Cool. I'll fix this guy's body and paint a little bit once we start painting the dimension on it. But I want to get as close as I can at this stage. All right. I think we maybe want to, let's see, actually, what would be a good color? They're going to be like gray, and we don't want them to take more attention than the dragon. So I feel like, or the serpent, I feel like we want it to be kind of gray too. Let's see. Yeah, I think all of them being kind of like a dark reddish gray, like this, not that dark, like that. Yeah. I think that color also looks really nice in this palette. And now I'll just kind of correct some of the volume on this guy. Snakes and other serpent-like creatures can actually be a little bit challenging volume-wise, because they're so close to being like a tube, but you really don't want them to be a tube because it's, you know, they'll just kind of look like a jelly worm. So you have to kind of fight really hard to find planes on, you know, on a form that has very few planes. So that's kind of one of the challenges of this type of shape. The way they move is so cool. They're just pure muscle.
Have you ever had one crawl around your arm before?
Sure have, yeah. I have a few snakes. Not here with me, or I would show you guys. Sadly, they're still in LA with my boyfriend, but love snakes. Love snakes a ton.
I'm planning on being a snake mom later in my life, but
Oh, that's awesome.
eventually. So cool. Just even having them like around your neck too. Like they almost kind of like massage you as well. It's really weird.
They do. They do. They squeeze on you. All right. That looks pretty solid. So I don't think we want it to just be like one solid dark color. So I think let's give it like kind of like a lighter underbelly, which a lot of like sharks and manta rays have this too. So I think it will make sense. I actually don't think it would start up on that part of the face. It'd start kind of down here. This will really help give it dimension too.
I'm curious, when you were first learning how to draw snakes, were you like just drawing your own snakes and like watching like how they moved and all that?
Yeah, it sure was. Yep. Yeah, I really am fascinated by reptiles in general. I've always loved reptiles. And yeah, there's I forget what it's called, the type of cage that I've got. Cage doesn't sound like a great word. It's pretty much like a tank, but they keep humidity in better. They're like these big black boxes with like transparent side, one transparent side, and I've got like these big branches through the cage, and the snakes like kind of slither up and over, you know, various surfaces, and it's really cool to watch the muscles, you know, flex and form as they, you know, go through different obstacles. It's so interesting to watch that happen, and to see like the way that such a simple body shape changes so much depending on the position. It's really cool. I highly recommend watching snakes move. Cool. All right. Yeah, so that does a lot already to give us some dimension. I may even want to go one step lighter, like this. Kind of a two-tone appearance. All right. Maybe, you know what? I wonder if maybe these guys look a little bit like sharks and manta rays. Like maybe they could like actually take on some of that kind of like soft appearance rather than having scales. That might be cool. That might be kind of a unique take on a serpent, you know, rather than the kind of typical like fins and scales. Maybe we have like kind of a leathery, you know, shark-like appearance. I think that might be really neat.
Great combination of the two.
Yeah, this will be fun. All right, well, what kind of eye would it have? Let's see, what do shark eyes look like? I know I've painted a lot of sharks before. I should know this. Oh, terrifying. Cool. I love sharks, but this is that sure is something. That's kind of cute. Oh, that's really cute. That's very cute.
Just a black dot.
Yeah. Oh my God. That's so silly looking. How is that a real creature? Gosh, I love sharks. Oh, that's kind of neat. Oh boy. That shark has seen some stuff. Oh, that's cool too. Ooh, so's that. Maybe something like that. That's neat. All right. We'll keep it from looking too silly. Too silly. Like there's this one type of snake that just looks like jelly worms. Sand boa. Let me show you guys. Look at this. How is that a real animal? I can't. Every time I see them, I shouldn't be making fun of them. I know it's for purposes of looking up through the sand. They get down into the sand. They like wiggle themselves down into the sand, and their eyes sit above the surface of the sand, and they can see what's going on around them. But oh gosh, they just look so silly. I love them. I've held one before. They really are like little jelly worms. They're small. They're little guys. Oh, that's so cute. Oh, sorry, I'm getting sidetracked. All right, I'm gonna make another layer and clip it to this for the eye. And let me create a little eye socket first. So make kind of a darker little eye socket like this. And then carve out that area. Actually, I think we want it a little smaller. Smaller eyes are going to make it look bigger, which I think we want it to look fairly large in comparison to the size of the manta rays that I have added. Yeah, that'll be cool. I think that'll be nice. So we need that, and then switch to kind of a gray blue. Maybe kind of have like a large pupil like this, and then this really dramatic shadow for form. That's neat. Although, man, looks kind of cool all white too. That's very cartoony, kind of fantasy, like dragon, to just have like this, magical eye that glows. But I do that in my art all the time, even though it's kind of basic. I love it. I'll decide later. I'm gonna leave it like this for now, and might add a pupil, might not. It might be neat to have that kind of fantasy eye. We could also do kind of like this type of deal with the faded pupil. That could be kind of neat.
Oh, and Devin, I know in our original schedule, I did have a break right now, but that's completely up to you if you want to take a break now or just want to go straight to the Q&A.
I'm fine. I don't need the break, but if you guys want to take a break, we could totally take a break. Up to you.
Chat, what do y'all say? Do you guys need to go to the bathroom, drink water, stretch out a bit? Silence. Good. Okay.
All right, let's just power through then. Let's do it.
All right, so you good if we start doing a little bit of Q&A?
Go for it. Yeah.
Cool. All right, so first one is from Denise or Dennis. I'm sorry if I got that wrong. So they ask, how long did it take you to be satisfied with your environment art? I remember you started in 2016 learning how to.
Okay, so I had a really great teacher at CDA, which is Concept Design Academy in Pasadena, which is a school that I was taking some classes at, who he really helped everyone in the class arrive at least one piece that we were happy with. I feel like that seems to kind of be his strategy. And so I think that by the end of that first course, I had like one environment piece that I was happy with. And that that one piece, which is called Pilgrimage, and it's on my DeviantArt if you want to look up the name Pilgrimage and see it. It's yeah, I think it should be on my DeviantArt still. I don't really take things down from there. And yeah, after that piece, I think like the energy from that piece just like kept me going. I will say that that I had kind of a lull in 2017, right when I started working in animation, where I felt really unsatisfied with my work. And I think that that is just kind of a thing that happens sometimes when you're, you know, you're suddenly on a team with a lot of talented, amazing people. And, you know, you want to feel like you're making really good stuff. And, you know, I was like 20 at the time, and I, you know, there's always ups and downs, but I would say that around 2018 was when I then started feeling like, okay, I feel solid. Like I feel like I can paint environments. I feel like good about this. So I guess about 2 years would be my answer for that.
Awesome. All right, next question by Anonymous. They ask, what are the normal Photoshop specifications that you work with?
Like canvas size and stuff?
Yeah, I think also because I think you also, if you go up, you can have your like workspace and everything.
Here's what I'm using right now. So this is 12 by 18 at 450 resolution. This is smaller than I typically work, just because I'm also, you know, like streaming this through Zoom, and I didn't want to have there be any sort of like lagging or anything. I usually will work at more like 600 DPI resolution at that sort of size. That's like unnecessary. I really only work that large because I do conventions when it's not a pandemic, and I sometimes print very large banners, and I just like having the opportunity to do that with everything that I make, even though the vast majority of stuff that I make I don't ever print a banner of. I just like the option, so that's why I work really big. But yeah, there's that. And then yeah, what else do you, let's see, what else is there? This is Photoshop CC 2019, I think, or 2020. Can't remember if I have updated on this computer or not. I don't recommend updating to 2021 yet. That's all I'll say on that.
Good to know. All right, Sylvia asks, how much time does it take you to draw a city versus a nature piece, and why?
Cities take longer to draw and far less time to paint. Nature is the opposite. I guess that's kind of the like trade-off for me. Cities, once I draw it, it's really like a fill in the blank process, just because I've painted so many cities before, and you know, I have pre-made windows that I just kind of drop in there and, you know, get to work. So I think they end up taking around the same amount of time in the end. It's just where the time is spent, because, you know, trees and stuff, drawing that in takes like no time. You know, I can sketch in a tree really quickly, but then painting a tree takes a lot of time. There's a lot of stuff that I need to fill in order to paint a tree well. So yeah, as for how long it takes, you know, it depends on how detailed the piece is, because I can do, you know, an hour-long version of each of those, which will be kind of quick and crappy, or I can do a, you know, a 2-hour version, which will be like a solid speed paint, or I could do a 5-hour version, which would be kind of like a simple painting, or I could do a 10-hour version, which would be a, you know, really detailed, in-depth painting. So if that kind of gives you a framework, I'm better with at least 3 hours. I will say that most of my best work takes between 5 and 7 hours. That's kind of the sweet spot for me. I don't know why, but I feel like when I work for too long on stuff, I have a tendency to get lost in it. And when I don't work on stuff long enough, it's just usually I'm not one of those artists who can make a really beautiful thing in an hour and a half, which you know, I mean, I'm doing my best here, but like you guys know, this won't be like, you know, a masterpiece or anything. I'm very like a middle ground type of artist, where my best pieces tend to take about 5 to 7 hours. Hope that helps.
No, I think it does. So another anonymous question. I want to be an illustration major. What's your best advice on how to draw/paint from your own imagination on pieces like these where you want to make an environment setting?
I think that for environment art, a lot of it is figuring out what you're interested in, and what is going to be fun and appealing to you. Like, because environments are everything in the whole world. So I recommend narrowing it a little bit more, figuring out what you as an individual are interested in, like what sparks that joy for you, what makes you feel like you want to paint, like that you don't want to do anything except sit down and paint. So that's my first tip. My second tip is to make it as easy on yourself as possible. So cut as many corners as you need to at first. And that's so that you can get some successes under your belt. That might mean working from very direct photo reference, like just copying photo reference. It might mean building SketchUp models and tracing them, and like skipping perspective at the beginning. And the reason for that is because environments can be really overwhelming. There's a really, really high drop-off rate for people who are interested in painting environments and backgrounds, just because it's everything in the whole world. I mean, I think that's what we kind of forget. We say there's characters and environments and we give them equal weight. And obviously characters are very difficult too. I'm not discounting how difficult characters are. Human anatomy, oh my God, there's so much happening. And I'm better with environments. So believe me that I know how complex characters are. But for people who've been doing characters their whole life, we need to remember that environments are everything else in the whole world. And that can feel really overwhelming. So, what I always say is that you want to get some successes under your belt, some pieces that you feel good about. That's going to motivate you to keep going. Because I'm always, keeping in mind that burnout is a possibility in that regard. And then for just like straight up practical advice, I do recommend learning the basics of perspective and really trying to internalize it, because it's going to help you a lot. I think that that every environment artist would really benefit from, like, if you don't understand, if it's not clicking for you, tracing photos, tracing your own photos, drawing directly on top of them, finding the vanishing points, like really trying to understand perspective, understanding it as you walk around, understanding it as you look at the world, really trying to get it to where it clicks and you're like, oh, I see this perspective, like where I'm going. I really feel like I understand this. On the practical side, I think that is really, really valuable. And then as a kind of a final tip, environments can be characters too. And they can have as much personality and story as the characters that we put in a scene. So treating environments as characters is another really, really great way to get into kind of the mode of figuring out, what we want to paint, and how we want to represent the space that we are creating, what story we want to tell with it. Also, yeah, manta rays do look like they have butts in the back. And it's very cute. Actually, let me see if I can find a cute little reference. None of the ones that I have show it very well, unfortunately. And it rounds out a lot when you paint it, but gosh, it just brings me so much joy. You can see it a little bit here. They've got these two little fins in the back that create this little butt shape. And it actually creates more of a swoop like this, but I don't know, something about it brings me joy doing this at first and then kind of refining it as I paint. I've painted so many manta rays that I have all these silly little things that I do when I'm painting them. I make this shape and then I make this shape. And then I actually paint a real manta ray shape after that. I don't know why that's my method, but it just brings me joy. What can I say? Did I finish answering that question? Oh, okay.
You're good. No, it's okay. We're getting distracted by manta ray butts, but they're beautiful.
They sure are.
All right, we got another anonymous question. So, what are your favorite brushes to use for painting things like this?
I really like the Kyle T. Webster Impressionist pack for brushes with color jitter. I think that it's a really great set, and it is really good for painting. I'm gonna give them all butts until later. It's really good for painting this kind of an environment. It's got a lot of like variation. I like Kyle Webster's brushes in general. I also like on ArtStation an artist named Greg Rutkowski. I hope I'm saying that right. He's got some really great brush sets. The Jamie Jones concept art brush set that's been around since like 2015, and it's free if you just Google Jamie Jones concept art brush pack or something. That's another really, really good one. But honestly, it doesn't matter a ton. All that matters is that I've got brushes with some texture that I can add color jitter to, because that's all I really need. You know, I don't use much else because I mostly paint with the Lasso Tool. So I don't have any brushes I really specifically need. I think I don't have any super great advice for painting brushes. Just find stuff with good like gritty texture that that you can add color jitter to if you want to paint the way that I do. And there's so many good packs. Like I the ones that I use are awesome. I don't even know if they're the best out there just because I'm happy with them. But if you search like oil textured or you know, gouache textured brush sets, you'll probably arrive at stuff that's similar to what I use.
Thank you for answering that. Our next question is from Audrey, and she's asking, how do you get the control to draw with the Lasso tool?
Boy, so that's really hard for me to answer because I've been painting this way since I was like 14. So I think it's very possible that I just have muscle memory, and because I don't find it challenging. And I don't have any great advice for if you do, aside from to just do it a lot, and to maybe do some like tracing exercises. I will say that I also have done a lot of ink painting. Like I line and paint in ink, which requires a lot of really, really careful tracing, you know, of lines. Like I've done a lot of practice doing like big swooping gestures in ink, and that has made my hand 10 times as steady as it was before. So if you want a steady hand, just do exercises trying to get smooth lines, you know, traced big smooth arches and stuff in ink. But then I think you can pretty much do the same thing with the Lasso tool. You know, I think it's just kind of a practice thing, you know, like, you know, I get as close as I can, and then I hold shift and I get it closer. And then if I want to remove some, I hold alt. So I'm not doing everything in one go. You know, that's another thing actually, is, you know, when I show myself in my process videos filling in selections, I'm not just grabbing the whole selection in one go. It's just, you know, in like a TikTok, it's really hard. It wouldn't be very interesting for me to show me going in and going, okay, taking away that and adding this and adding this and taking away that, you know. So I just show the final, you know, beautiful selection. But I do go in and noodle it. I'm not just getting it all in one go. So I hope that helps and maybe takes some of the pressure off for people who see it.
Yeah, definitely. And then Julian Sanchez asked, are there any specific resources you use to learn how to create Photoshop brushes, or did you just learn on your own?
You know, I have a very unfair advantage with Photoshop, which is that my mom was in college for graphic design when I was a toddler. She was going to the local community college called Cabrillo College, and taking graphic design courses, and she was learning Photoshop. And I actually, she let me use her tablet and would draw stuff for me in Photoshop and have me paint in Photoshop from the time I was a toddler, little 2-year-old. So I learned how to make brushes on my own. I would say somewhere around the age of 10. I don't have any recollection of how I did it. Unfortunately, I think that the good thing is that nowadays you can go on YouTube and search up like how to make Photoshop brushes, and you'll probably get like 15 videos. So I would recommend going there and looking on YouTube. I will say that for almost anything Photoshop related, there's probably a YouTube video about it. Like if you have, or Procreate or Clip Studio, like when I had never made Clip Studio or Procreate brushes before I started making brush packs. But then I wanted to make my brush packs for those programs too. I just went on YouTube and looked up how to make brushes in those programs. And I will say there's less for Clip Studio Paint. I might at some point make my own how to make Clip Studio Paint brushes tutorial, just because there wasn't one that showed everything that I needed to do. But once you get kind of the basic understanding through videos or whatever, just go in and play. Just turn stuff off and on, see what it does. Treat it like a video game. When we're like, playing a new video game for the first time, it's really overwhelming, especially a complex video game. But you figure everything out, and then by the end of the game, you know where everything is, and it's just muscle memory. Like it's the same with any drawing program. So you kind of need to treat it like I feel like sometimes we get a little afraid. We get afraid to mess something up. We don't want to uncheck something and have it mess something up. But I feel like the better approach is actually to check and uncheck everything and actually figure out what it does. And then you won't have that fear anymore, kind of like, yeah, just like in a video game, you want to press A in front of everything, and figure out what it does. And I kind of recommend the same approach for drawing programs.
Yeah, that's some really good advice. Then another anonymous question. What's the best advice for someone who would just started digital art who wants to make it their career?
This advice has nothing to do with digital painting, but I really think it's the most valuable. And it's to take care of your body and your mind, and just to take care of yourself and to be kind to yourself, because a career in the art is taxing physically and mentally. And that isn't to dissuade you from doing it. I love it. I love it. I would never want to do anything else. But that said, it is really taxing. And we really got to make sure that we take care of ourselves, especially because, if I don't know what industry you want to go into, but that industry probably doesn't care that much about you. And I don't mean the individual people. You're going to run into plenty of wonderful, amazing people who do care about you. But on the whole, the corporations that we're making art for, they don't care about our minds and our bodies. So we need to be advocates for ourselves and for other people. So that's always what I prioritize the most. Burnout is probably the biggest complication in a career. It's, if you're excited and happy and you love the process, nothing's going to stop you. Well, not nothing, there's things that can stop us. I know that everyone's different and everyone's in a different situation. But on the whole, people who, are kind to themselves and feel happy and love the process and are really enjoying it and have nurtured the love for their craft, they're going to find more success on the whole. Then, it's really hard. It's really hard to do this job when you're burnt out. It's almost impossible. So yeah, take care of your mind, take care of your body, nurture your love for the craft, be kind to yourself when things don't go well. Remember that everyone learns at their own pace and that everyone's situation is different, and we all have vastly different access to physical resources, emotional resources, support, everything. So that makes comparison virtually useless. It really is ultimately useless to compare ourselves to anyone else, because the circumstances of every person on this planet are so vastly different and unequal that we just got to be kind to ourselves. And yeah, I don't know. I know that's not our advice, but I hope that helps. Good luck. You're going to do great.
That was so sweet. That was so nice. I really liked that advice. I just the entire it's useless to compare yourself to others. I like that.
I really
All
do
right.
think it's true.
Definitely. Another anonymous question. Did you ever go through periods where you felt like your skills weren't improving or you consistently weren't getting the results you wanted? Do you have any tips for dealing with those types of feelings of failure and what helps keep you improving in general?
Yeah, I'm in one of those periods right now where I've been struggling a lot. I go through and it's probably hard to see from the outside, and really a lot of it is for the commercial work that I do. And that's normal. Like I want you guys to know that you're going to have that for your whole career. There's going to be weeks or months. And for me, it often coincides with when my chronic illness is acting up because I get brain fog, which makes it a lot harder for me to work and do my best work. But that we gotta remember that like that's gonna happen forever. So we need to just learn how to be kind to ourselves when we're in that zone. And remember that progress isn't linear. Oops, sorry about that. Sorry for the Windows noise. Progress isn't linear. And you may be progressing in ways that you don't realize. For example, if your work suddenly looks bad to you and it didn't before, that's actually not because you've gotten worse in any way. It's because your eye has gotten better. It means that you've learned to see mistakes that were always there that you weren't seeing before, and you want that. So when I'm feeling that way, when I'm like, oh my God, things are turning out bad, it's not that they're suddenly bad and they weren't before. It's that those mistakes were always there and I'm seeing them now. And seeing them is actually like 80% of the battle. Fixing them is much easier than seeing them. So if you're in a spot where you feel like things aren't going well, it probably means that your eye has improved really rapidly and that you're actually seeing a lot of mistakes that you weren't before. And that's a good thing, even if it doesn't feel good. So I just try to keep that in mind. And then I know it is much easier said than done, but be kind to yourself. I'm going to repeat that probably like 50 times. But if we can learn to be kind and forgiving of ourselves when things aren't going well, that's really like that's most of the battle. We'll always climb out and get to the other side, but it's going to happen much faster if we're forgiving of ourselves when we're going through that process.
Yeah, definitely. So Giselle, I hope I pronounced that correct, asked, do you think it's worth investing into social media as an artist because becoming popular enough to make enough money from it seems difficult? I also don't know how you balance your job and social media. You are a champ. It seems really hard.
This is a difficult question for me to answer because I have spoken to so many students whose social media has been really bad for their mental health. So I have difficulty recommending it to anybody. I think that being on social media is great. I think that artists being on social media is wonderful because you can find community, and finding community is like integral to being a human. You know what I mean? Like we want community so bad. Our brains want community. And there's really wonderful communities of artists online. But as for like building a following and trying to make money off of a following, I don't recommend for it and I don't recommend against it. That's my stance. If it's something you want to do, then I think you should do it. If it's something you don't want to do, I don't think you should do it. And I think I'm just gonna like I gotta just leave it there because I've seen it become such a negative force on so many people before that I wouldn't want to recommend something that might be for someone. That said, I've had a wonderful experience on social media. I've made so many friends, and so many of the wonderful opportunities that I've gotten are because of social media. I would say almost every single one. So social media can be fantastic. I'm also very lucky. I started on social media when I was 13. And I have no idea if I would have found success the way that I have if I'd started later. I got a real head start. So yeah, I guess, it's complicated. I do think that being in those spaces and like making friends and finding peers, that I recommend wholeheartedly. Find that community, make those connections. That's always going to be valuable. Make friends with the people around you and be a community member. I fully sign off on that. But as for making a career in social media, can't recommend it or recommend against it. Yeah.
No, that's completely understandable. Definitely you can see both the positives and negatives from it. Okay, we have another anonymous question. Can you talk about your education history? How old were you when you got your first gig, and how long did it take you to get there?
Yeah. So I was 17 when I graduated high school, and I got accepted into Laguna College of Art and Design, and I got a huge scholarship that covered most of my expenses to that school. So it was the right choice. But I was only there for a year because I got really sick while I was there. I had a really long and bad episode of my chronic illness that I never really was able to bounce back from. And I just realized that sort of that type of education wasn't going to work for me, just because the world's not built for people who are randomly unable to do anything for a week or more at a time. So I dropped out when I was 18, and I took classes on Schoolism, which is a really, really wonderful online school, as well as Concept Design Academy in Pasadena. And I did a combination of those two schools. I think I only took like 6 classes total, maybe less, maybe like 5. And then my friend, who was an online friend of mine, who I just met when I was young, is actually the partner, the wife of someone who, at the time, girlfriend of someone who I'd met when I was like 12 online. So that's how these connections can happen. Anyway, that person, she thought I would be a good fit for Disenchantment and just told me to put my application in. She was like, I can't get you hired, but I can get them to look at your application. And they looked at my application. They said, seems like a long shot, but sure, why not? And I ended up being a fit. I had a environment, very game-based environment portfolio at the time, but they took a chance on a 20-year-old, and I was there ever since. And I became lead when I was 22 or 23 on the BG Paint team. And other than that, I've mainly just freelanced on stuff. That's my only in-house job that I've done. So yeah, that's more or less my my employment and education history. Oh, Concept Design Academy is actually doing online classes during COVID. They're a non-accredited school, which means you don't need to like get accepted or anything. It's not like a program. It's just like a sign up for classes. They're like $700 a class, and then it's like 10 weeks. And Schoolism is kind of the same thing, but it's a little more expensive. It's like $1,000 per class. But anyway, they're both great if you're ever at a point where you're like, I want to take a more specific class in like an industry subject. Just a one-off, and they have industry people teaching them, so it's very industry oriented. So yeah, that was what I ended up doing.
Yeah, thank you. I actually have a question.
Sure.
So I'm someone who I've always grew up loving animals. I absolutely adore them. And like even just seeing your artwork, including a lot of animals, and also even hearing you now like talking about like, oh, the stingrays have butts, and this is like the anatomy of a snake a bit. Like, how much of the anatomy did you actually like go into when you first started drawing all these different animals, or did you just kind of just kept drawing them and like looking at them?
Good question. I think it's mainly just I think I just kind of pick it up naturally as I do it. I am interested in it, so it's something that I'm looking for, as I'm drawing and painting different animals. But yeah, I've always just been kind of interested in like why things move the way they do. I think it's really interesting to figure out like the why. I'm always like looking up skeletons of animals and like muscle structures and like trying to understand what's like going on inside the body, because I've found that really helpful for like understanding what I'm seeing on the outside, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. It's so informative when you actually look at like how things are built and made.
Exactly. Yeah. You learn so much about why things look the way they do.
Yeah, well, right now we did answer all the questions in the Q&A. Obviously this event goes until 8 p.m. your time. So you feel free to keep dropping in some questions. I'll probably have some random questions if it comes to my head.
In the meantime, should I just talk about what I'm doing?
Yeah, sure, go for it.
All right. Well, I just added shadows in using multiply layers, and now I am figuring out what is going to be inside the water and outside the water on this serpent. So I want the spine to I want to show the volume of the body by like what is sticking out. You know what I mean? Like to show that this is like a higher up plane by having the water kind of form around it. And then we can show a little bit of the body here and here. But then have, right. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, one of our officers, Suong, asked, what is your favorite layer mode?
Like what do I use the most? Probably multiply. I don't think I could go without multiply because it's just the best for shading. I also really like overlay, hard light, and color dodge. I would say that those are kind of my go-tos.
Good ones.
I'm gonna make these guys darker all over also. Maybe a little bit more green, kind of like this. Yeah, not yellow. There we go. Neat. And then I'll erase it out on the ones that are closer to us. Awesome. All right. Now we get to do the very fun shadow trick. So first I'm just holding control and tapping on this serpent's layer, and it picks up the selection. I'm gonna make a new layer down at the bottom, set it to multiply, and I'm just gonna go to the lasso tool and drag this selection down into the right to make a shadow like this. I think we want it, let's see. Where do we want the shadow? Kind of like that. And maybe a little more gray. I feel like we maybe want it, yeah, down a bit lower. I think that's gonna give it a better effect. And then I can give it some perspective like this. And then I want to fuzz out these edges. And then I'm going to erase out some of the lights that we're seeing through it, because we're not going to see as much of that like light texture inside the shadow. So it'll look a lot more a lot more like dark in there without we'll see a little bit of this light pattern, but we won't see it as intensely inside the shadow area. So I'll do that next though, because first I want to grab all of these guys and also drag them. And I'm not going to drag them as far because they're closer to the water, to the floor of the water. And then I also want to vary them a little bit. I don't want them all to be the same height. So like, for example, this one, I should bring it down more like this because it's higher up. So there's going to be more distance between the shadow and the body. Maybe that one is like that. This guy actually in general, I feel like it's a little too, it's like kind of out of perspective. So let's do that. And then do the same thing with the shadow. Like that. That looks much better. Yeah, so I'm going to drag some of them further away and that will like give them more distance. It will make them look higher up in the water. Oops, didn't mean to grab that. Just that. Cool. Just trying to vary it a little bit to give interest. Fill out the parts that need to be filled out, and then I will fuzz out more of these edges. Like this. And actually, since we're a little short on time, I'm going to grab just this smudge brush and use that to smudge out some of these edges like this. Because I really want to get to the water stuff because I think that's going to be interesting for you guys. Oops, that was way too much. Nope, don't, go back. Cool. So I'll select inside these shadows and then do a select inverse on it. And actually, I'll just, since I already have a layer mask, I can just darken them a little bit like that.
Got another question from Sylvia. They asked, do these manta rays not have tails, or is it that just because it's a small detail on them?
Oh, I'll add them. I'll add the tails in. I might do that toward the end, and I'll show you guys why. For the manta rays, these little kind of little bitty things that are that skinny, what I'm about to do with the smudge brush can make them go a little crazy. So I sometimes add them in kind of toward the end because they, let me just show you what I'm going to do with the water. And you might kind of see what I mean. So first thing I'm going to, all right, so let's talk about water patterns real quick. So this serpent is going to be making some pretty dramatic water patterns. It's going to be creating like a whoosh, whoosh, this kind of a deal. And I think I'm going to give it some spikes also. I don't know if that will make it look not like kind of like a shark. I don't know. I'm not certain on that, but I can figure that out later. So first I'm just visualizing these patterns that I want to see like this. So we're going to create this kind of larger pattern first. And what I'm going to do is I am going to actually do a copy merged. I'm running a copy merged here, pasting it on top of everything. And then I'm going to grab a smudge brush and not set it to 100, set it to like 80. And we're actually just going to start smudging like this. And we're going to follow the pattern that I just set up. And I know that it sounds like it's gonna mess things up, but it actually just makes it look like water. Like it really does. Like, here, let me turn that off. You can already start kind of seeing it, and we'll perfect it. Like we'll make little adjustments here and there. There's actually a little bit too much on this guy. We'll make little adjustments here and there and like paint over it a little bit, but it really does just start looking like water. And I'll follow these ripples down in this pattern like this. And like that. I want to get what's underneath it too, like this. And when there's not an animal, I can make some kind of more sweeping gestures. And you guys can see how it's starting to create the appearance of this snake or serpent moving through the water. And hit this area. Hit that. And then what's outside of it, I'll just make some like smaller, you know, we still want it to look like it's in the water, but it can be a little bit more still out here. And that's why I don't add little details in at this stage, because when you add those little lines in, it kind of shows your hand a little bit. It shows that it's the smudge tool. So those little spines and the tails and stuff, we can do those by hand afterward. So let's clean this up a little bit. So we've got this, and it looks there's a little too much happening, right? So now we need to go in with a brush and just start, you know, making this look painted. And if I were gonna do this, you know, on a full-on painting, then I'd do a better job with this, because we do need to kind of go in and clean up these and make it look like, you know, a thing in water. And we get some of these, you know, we'll get these little pockets of like light peeking through, stuff like that. We get these little repeating shapes where it'll like kind of double like that. Do you kind of see what I mean? And that starts making it look like water. And we just go through the whole piece and just refine what we just did with the smudge tool. And like, I promise you guys can do this too. I really promise that if you try this, like you'll get results that look pretty neat. Really fun technique. This is actually like probably like the 4th or 5th time I've done this. I really like painting underwater stuff. Just one of my favorite kind of things to paint. But once you go through it a few times, I don't know, it's fun. I really like it. I think it's a really cool method of making a neat painting. And then we can also create, you know, we want to create these like ripples, so we can kind of draw out some of these lines in the pattern of these ripples that we're making like that. And we'll get more like light stuff right around here. More light kind of popping through. And I pay the most attention to what's up front here, because this is what's closest to us. So it's kind of where the eye goes naturally. But what's back here, we can leave this a little bit looser. We don't need to pay like as close of attention to it. This was the part I really wanted to show, so I'm glad that I got to it. Oh yeah, and then we can add the little tails in, and we can give them kind of a warbly effect without it looking like too much. That's actually a little too much. Let's do that. And then I think I might give this guy some spikes too. Neat. So this is pretty heavy distortion because this serpent is moving. So like, let me show you what I mean. I'm trying to copy this kind of a look down here. You can see how there's a ton of water distortion, you know, it's pushing all this water out of the way. We still see some of it, like even in more still water, like we still get some of it, but in really still water, we don't see as much of that. But then when there's water distortion, you know, when there's water being pushed out of the way, that's what creates that distortion. So, you know, understanding that and taking advantage of it to show the movement of what's happening is really cool. You know, it's like a fun thing we can do. And okay, so hold up, let me actually save this because I don't think I have yet. So after we do that pass, the next thing I'm going to do is make a multiply layer on top, grab kind of like a greenish paint color like this. And now I'm going to start actually painting in. I'm going to turn this down, but keep it on. I'm going to start painting in, you know, this pattern a little bit. And I'm looking at those references of the serpents moving through the water. You can see what I mean. You know, we're just kind of like reinforcing that. We're reinforcing that the motion of the water. And creating all these little ripples. And can do that on the other side as well. And in the front, we'll want to create like that kind of a pattern.
We got a question.
Sure.
They ask, would some of the direction beyond or distortion be on parts of the snake that's underwater, or is there a reason it's not there?
We will. I'm going to go in and kind of paint that transition line, and then we'll add it kind of as I paint that. I don't think using the smudge tool in there would be the best option. I think because I did it a little bit here, and I think it's going to be better to paint that by hand. You probably could still use the smudge tool to start doing that. But I have a feeling that that painting it is going to maybe be the option, just because I think we're actually gonna we're gonna get an effect where we don't see a ton on it right at the, let me show you guys kind of what I mean. We're gonna see a little bit, but I don't think we're actually gonna see, where'd it go? I don't think we're gonna see a ton on the body of the snake itself. We'll see it. Wow, I don't know why it's doing that. We'll see it on these ripples, but that's about it. Like when a ripple's like going over it. So I think painting it by hand is going to be the option here. You know that I love little tricks and stuff, but sometimes painting it is the right call for getting the result fastest. And I try to remember that. Sometimes the digital trickery has its limits. So let's actually do that next, because I want I want to kind of do this little transition here. So we're going to get some effects of like, what's going to happen is that this body is actually just going to kind of ripple a little bit underwater like this. And then we're going to get light on the surface of the water where it meets it like this. My neighbor's kids are playing in the backyard. I don't know
It's
what
all right.
they're playing, but oh, go ahead.
They're having fun.
Yeah. No, it's very cute. I don't know if you guys can hear it. Oh, actually, this is all underwater, isn't it? I'm dumb. This is where this is going to be. We want this, like this, and then like this. That was a different shadow. So on the edge of the water, we get this kind of light outline, and we can go in and refine that a little bit. But we get this little, like, we get these little highlight glints that catch like sunlight and all kinds of stuff. All light from all sorts of different places, you know, in water, light's reflecting off of so many different things. I know we're about to end. Let me know if there's any last minute questions, by the way.
As of right now, there is not.
Cool. All right. Well, then I'll just talk about this. So yeah, on this little transition between the water and the creature, we're gonna get like a line of light and like a line of dark. And then I've like overdone it a little bit. We're gonna want to erase it out in some areas, but we get this, and it shows the dimension of the water, if you kind of see what I mean. And then we can make these edges kind of wiggly. I think that's a little too much. We just want them to be a little wiggly. See, just a little wiggly.
I have a question in the Q&A from Keely, and she's asking, how do you balance realism and stylization?
Oh, good question. You know, I really think that depends on the artist. My personal advice is, instead of focusing on realism, focus on believability. And believability can come from more than something looking physically real. It might be that the scene itself, the emotional impact of it resonates, and that feels believable. You know, it might be that the color represents how something feels, not just how it might actually look. Or, you know, it might be that it represents, it looks the way that you remember it in your mind, you know. Like, you know, there's this phenomenon of, I feel like a lot of us remember our childhood as more colorful than the way we see the world now. And sometimes I paint my work like that, you know, and people still feel like, oh, this feels real, it feels believable, when, like, you know, maybe the color wouldn't be anything like that. But the balance I'm trying to find is, you know, I want things to feel believable, not necessarily feel realistic. So that's at least how I kind of approach that. But, you know, I think it really, like, it's different for every person. You know, we're all going to have kind of a different take on how to deal with simplifying the complexity of the whole world, you know, because there's so much stuff in the world, and art is figuring out how to represent all of it. And I think we all kind of figure out what the path is going to be for us as an individual, you know, when it comes to style and when it comes to, you know, how we're going to express it. But I've found that if the emotional resonance is there, then it feels right to me, regardless of what style I'm painting something in. And like, even a piece like this, I think, can have emotional resonance. You know what I mean? Like, the emotional resonance can just be like, wow, that's cool. You know, just a feeling of like, cool, like, neat, like, just inspiring that feeling of like, oh, it's a cool thing. Like, sometimes that's the emotional resonance that I'm looking for in my art. And like, that's enough for me. I'm gonna make this shiny. It's gonna make this a lot more believable. I think we actually want cool shine, not warm shine. From the sky. And make this a little more lit on this front area, like that. And then turn it down a little bit there. Just trying to make it look wet, like a wet creature, kind of like a little bit eel-like maybe. Well, I mean, we actually got pretty far here. I think I showed you guys most of the interesting part. I think after this, it's really just a matter of rendering it until we like it, you know? And I could stop here and this could be a totally fine, like totally great, like concept piece. You know what I mean? Like, or I could work on this for another 5 hours and turn into a really, really detailed painting. But you know, whatever we do in that regard, you know, this is most of it. Getting a painting to this point actually is most of the battle. You know, from there, it's just figuring out how much we want to refine it. So yeah, cool.
Yeah, definitely. No, that's so awesome. I got to see like how the water effect works, because I know that's like always so like it's hard to think of how to do that. And so I really appreciate you being able to show how that works.
For sure.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for doing this and just sharing us your process and answering some questions and just being a lovely guest.
Thank you for having me. I had a wonderful time. You guys are all lovely. Gosh, yeah, had a great time. I'm glad that it seems like it was helpful and enjoyable. Hope you guys have a good rest of your weekend.
Yeah, thank you. We're actually on spring break right now too, so we're all just mad chilling.
You guys are all set then. That's awesome. Cool. Well, enjoy your spring break. And yeah, I had a great time. If you ever want me to do it again, just give me a shout.
Yeah, of course. We'll always keep that in mind. Thank you so much. Thank you guys for showing up, and I hope you guys have a good rest of your night. Thank you.
Thank you.